Welcome to Decoding Coffee with Raja podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about something we all come across, sugarcoating.
Ooh.
You know, that tendency to kind of dance around the hard truths, maybe cushion things a little more than we should, even when it might backfire on us.
Yeah.
Think about it. Have you ever found yourself sugarcoating something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was going on in your head at that moment?
Totally. It's interesting because, we often think we're being, polite or considerate. But, what we're going to uncover in this deep dive is that it can actually have kind of a ripple effect with some pretty significant consequences.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So to dive into all of that, we've got some really interesting sources today that explore why people sugarcoat, the impact it has on businesses, and even what it means for us just, as individuals.
Right.
One article starts with this scenario that I think a lot of us can probably relate to. You're all excited to buy a new smartphone. You've done your research, you're ready to pull the trigger, but then when you get to the store, the salesperson starts get a little evasive about the battery life.
Oh, yeah.
You kind of get that nagging feeling like, wait a minute, are they holding something back?
Mm-hmm.
But you brush it off and go ahead with the purchase anyway.
Yeah.
And then you get home and realize the battery barely lasts through your morning commute.
The worst. I mean, that is a perfect example of how sugarcoating can actually harm both sides. The customer's stuck with a product that's not really meeting their needs, and the company, they risk losing trust and potentially losing future business.
It's such a classic lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
And the article even puts a number to this. 43% of consumers will actually ditch a company because of negative experiences that are linked to a lack of transparency.
Wow.
That's almost half their customer base walking away.
Yeah.
So think about the brands that you've chosen to support. How much does honesty and straightforwardness from a company really factor into your decisions?
I think it's a lot. What's so fascinating is that, this goes beyond, just a simple transaction.
Right.
When companies aren't upfront about things, it breeds this sense of distrust, and you start to question their motives and their reliability.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you think about that deeper psychological impact. Like, why do consumers value transparency so much? It's because it signifies respect and fairness.
Yeah.
It tells us that the company values us being able to make an informed decision.
Absolutely. And the source goes on to highlight this interesting cultural context, specifically around India's ingrained aversion to directly saying no.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, it seems polite, even respectful.
Right.
But as the article unpacks it, this cultural norm can actually hinder progress and innovation and accountability. It's like, if no one feels comfortable giving direct feedback or pushing back on ideas, real growth and effective communication become like a real uphill battle.
Right.
And it really brings up an important point, too, that cultural nuances play a significant role in how we communicate.
Yeah.
And understanding these differences is super critical, especially in a globalized world.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's kind of like this other example that they bring up in the article. Imagine you're part of a project team. Everyone's putting in the work. There's this real sense of camaraderie.
Right.
But then when it comes time for feedback from, say, your manager, you only get vague praise.
Yeah.
No real critique, no specific areas for improvement, just a general, good job, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever been in that kind of situation?
Go to make you feel
like deflated. It's a recipe for, frustration and stagnation.
All right.
Because instead of clear direction and, like kind of constructive criticism, the team's just left with this uncertainty, wondering what they could be doing better.
Yeah.
The article actually brings up this statistic that 56% of project failures can be attributed to poor communication.
Wow.
That's more than half.
Yeah. And sugarcoating plays a major role in this whole communication breakdown.
It makes you wonder if, over half of projects are failing because of poor communication.
Yeah.
How much potential are we leaving on the table just because we're not being straightforward with each other?
Right.
It's like we're afraid of honest, constructive dialogue, even when it could lead to so much growth and improvement.
Exactly. And it's interesting because the source doesn't just dwell on the negatives.
Right.
It also highlights these unexpected benefits of transparency.
Yeah.
Like stronger customer loyalty, higher employee engagement, and even increased returns for shareholders.
Yeah.
Transparency can really be this powerful driver of success.
It's almost like this hidden superpower, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about being nice.
Right.
It's about fostering something much deeper and more impactful.
Trust. Totally.
And that trust can create like this ripple effect of positive outcomes
Yeah.
that benefits everyone involved.
Absolutely. The article dives into this idea further, and it gives this really compelling example of a company that basically flipped the script on traditional communication.
Okay.
They decided to embrace radical transparency,
Yeah.
making their financials, their decision-making process, even their challenges completely open to their employees and their customers.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Tell me they didn't completely implode.
Quite the opposite, actually. They thrived.
Okay.
Their employees felt more engaged, more invested. Their customers developed this deeper sense of trust and loyalty, and their overall performance, skyrocketed.
Yeah.
It's a powerful testament to the idea that honesty and transparency, even when it's difficult, can actually be the most strategic and rewarding approach.
It's so amazing how counterintuitive that can seem, right?
Yeah.
We're so conditioned to think that we need to protect information, present this perfect facade, but in reality, that often backfires.
Mm-hmm.
People can sense when something isn't genuine, and it erodes trust faster than almost anything else.
It really highlights how much we crave authenticity. We want to connect with people and businesses that are real,
Right.
that are willing to be vulnerable and show their human side.
Yeah. So we've talked about the downsides of sugarcoating and these surprising upsides of transparency. We even touched on cultural influences and some inspiring examples. But how do we actually put this into practice?
Right.
Like in our own lives?
Yeah.
How do we embrace transparency in a way that feels authentic and beneficial?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
I think it all starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing when we're tempted to sugarcoat, understanding why we're doing it, and then consciously choosing a more transparent approach. Think about, your own communication patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Do you tend to sugarcoat things?
Right.
In what situations? What motivates you to do so?
It's almost like you're shining a light on our own ingrained habits and then asking ourselves, is this really serving me?
Right.
Is this serving the people I'm communicating with?
Yeah.
If not, how can I shift my approach?
Exactly. And it's not about being brutally honest all the time.
Right.
There's a balance to strike between directness and empathy.
Yeah.
Being clear and truthful while still being respectful and considerate of other people's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the tone that you use, the words that you choose, and just the overall intention behind your message.
The article gives some really practical tips on how to find that balance.
Oh, okay.
It talks about focusing on constructive feedback rather than just criticism.
Yeah.
For example, instead of saying, that's wrong,
Yeah.
you might say, hey, here's how we can improve this. Or I'm wondering if there's a different approach we could try.
Right.
It's about offering solutions,
Yeah.
not just pointing out problems.
Yeah.
And then the article also emphasizes how important it is to create a safe space for open communication.
That is so key.
Yeah.
Because people need to feel comfortable speaking their minds, sharing their ideas, even disagreeing without fear of judgment or repercussions. If someone feels like they're going to get shut down or ridiculed for being honest, they're less likely to share their true thoughts and feelings.
This kind of reminds me of that statistic we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
that 60% of consumers feel like companies have lost touch with the human element of customer experience.
Right.
And that lack of transparency, I think, is a huge part of that disconnect.
Totally. And when companies are open and honest with their customers, it creates this sense of trust and connection.
Mm-hmm.
Customers feel like they're being treated as individuals, not just transactions.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, where do you encounter this lack of a human element in your own experiences as a consumer? What would you change?
It's a great question. I think the article highlights this really powerful example of a company that decided to be completely transparent about a product recall.
Oh, wow.
So instead of trying to downplay the issue or shift blame, they owned up to their mistake, explained what went wrong, and outlined the steps that they were taking to fix it. And what they found was remarkable.
I'm intrigued. What happened?
Their customers were more loyal after the recall than before.
Really?
So even though they'd experienced this, negative situation, the company's honesty and transparency actually fostered this deeper level of trust.
Wow.
It demonstrated that the company valued their customers and was committed to making things right.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It really shows that transparency isn't just about avoiding those negative situations.
Yeah.
but it's about navigating them with integrity
Yeah.
and building stronger relationships through the process.
Exactly. And this applies to our personal lives as
Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a time when a friend or family member was transparent with you about something difficult.
Yeah.
Did it strengthen your relationship? Did it make you trust them more?
It's amazing how vulnerability can be such a powerful tool for connection.
Totally.
And it all comes back to that statistic that we talked about earlier, about 81% of consumers prioritizing transparency when choosing businesses that they trust.
Right.
It's clear that transparency is not just a nice to have.
Yeah.
It's fundamental to building those strong and lasting relationships, both in business and in our personal lives.
It's a powerful currency in today's world.
Yeah.
It builds credibility, fosters loyalty, and ultimately, it drives success.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the high cost of sugarcoating, let's take a minute to think about everything we've uncovered.
Yeah, we've seen how sugarcoating, although often meant to be kind, can actually lead to misunderstandings, missed opportunities, even damaged relationships. It's almost like you're trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. You know, it might look okay at first, but it's just not going to last.
Yeah, and on the flip side, we've explored all of these amazing benefits of embracing transparency, stronger customer connections, better employee engagement, and even improved financial performance.
Absolutely.
It's almost like transparency is the bedrock that allows for that genuine connection and growth.
It is.
And of course, we touched on how important it is to be mindful of cultural nuances and creating those safe spaces for open and honest dialogue.
Right.
Which means, recognizing that transparency isn't a one-size-fits-all approach and that being sensitive to those different communication styles is so essential.
It is.
Now, this deep dive has focused mostly on the business world, but I think it sparks some really important questions for all of us to consider. Where else in your life might embracing transparency lead to better outcomes? Think about your personal relationships, your family and friends, even your career aspirations. It's a really powerful concept with these far-reaching implications.
It really is. It's about understanding that authenticity and vulnerability, even when they feel uncomfortable, can actually be the key to building trust, deepening connections, and ultimately living a more fulfilling life.
That is such a powerful takeaway. And as always, we want to hear what you think. What resonated most with you during this deep dive? What are your own experiences with sugarcoating and transparency? Share your thoughts with us on social media. And until next time, keep diving deep.
Thank you for tuning in to the Decoding Coffee with Raja podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to like, follow, and share it with your friends. Let's keep brewing ideas together. Catch you soon.